and welcome to Desi in Design.
Whoa.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Sravya Attaluri. I'm a creative director and illustrator based in London. And on this podcast, I chat with other South Asian creatives about their career journeys, challenges, and triumphs. Today, I'm joined by Sneha Shah, a London-based curator, art advisor, and the founder of Curaty, a platform making the art world more accessible for both artists and collectors. With a background in both fine art and art history, Sneha has curated many shows and advised clients ranging from first-time collectors to institutions. In this episode, we talk about how to build a career in the fine art world, what a curator actually does, and how art advisory works behind the scenes. We also get into how to actually start collecting art, how exhibitions are funded, and Sneha's honest thoughts on elitism and representation in the industry. Let's dive in. I would love to start off with an introduction about what you do, your background.
I'm Sneha. I am an art advisor, an artist, and a curator. And I'm the founder of a platform called Curaty. We're a socially conscious art advisory firm on a mission to create a world where everyone every day can experience the power of art. We also have an e-commerce platform where you can buy incredible art by these talented artists as well. So it's been growing for the last 5 years. And that's a little bit about my little baby.
Yeah. Sounds like you're doing so much. So what kind of clients do you usually have for Curaty?
So with Curaty, we work with corporate clients. So you can think about financial firms. London Stock Exchange Group is one of our clients. We've worked very closely with CBRE in the past. We have layers of interventions. So for instance, we work closely with people that have just bought their first home and want to kind of put up art in their space. And that's kind of more of like a low touch experience. And then we really work on a retainer basis with ultra high net worth individuals that really want to build a statement collection over the years, really want to patron the arts. We help them with their strategy, how to actually build a more meaningful art collection as well. And with hospitality, we're really looking at how can we create more inspiring spaces? Because that's the whole point of it, right? Like when you walk into a great hotel, the moment you get transported and you feel like you're in a different world, right? And art can be such a big part of that conversation.
Yeah, it's so exciting to hear that the corporate world, hospitality, so many different industries are investing in art and are interested in art because it gives creatives hope and reminds people of how important art is and the fact that it can be a career.
I agree with you. And I think more than that, I think something that we learned in the pandemic is that we all have a creative, outlet within ourselves. And when you have art in offices, right, it allows someone else to just take a moment, step away from their desk, and engage with a piece of somebody else's consciousness. It's something that someone else has created in a span of a time that you then get engaged with. And when curated well, with the right artwork in the right space, when I say that, I mean, sometimes you have meeting rooms with really loud artworks in there, and that's a terrible way to have a meeting because you're constantly distracted by the artwork on the wall. You want a more focused space there. And when the artwork's curated right, you realize that it can actually help enhance your own workflow, but it can also help you connect with your own creativity.
Yeah, I think people need to know the impact of the type of art that they put in their spaces, right?
Exactly. Even beyond that, when you think about impact, it happens on so many different levels because there's just the visual aesthetic impact where when you walk into a beautiful space, you just feel abundant.
Yeah.
You feel more deserving. It's why we invest so much in workspaces like big financial firms, because if they had shabby offices, people would not
want to go in,
but they wouldn't also take them seriously. Like you don't want to see a bank that has a shabby office, Like they should have money. They should be able to invest in this, right?
Yeah.
And art is such a big part of that, creating that abundance mindset as well. Like I was at Deutsche Bank office last week, and I kind of love the way that they've kind of curated their space and made art such a big ethos within their corporate culture. Like every meeting room is named after an artist.
Wow.
And the meeting room will then have an artwork by that artist. And so think about it this way, like every person that books a meeting room will know a name of an artist, a different artist.
That's amazing.
Right? That's so creative. I love it. Yeah.
It's a great way to get an art education if you didn't have access to it earlier, right? You now work at a place that kind of exposes you to different artworks. That's also wonderful.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, I want to go back to your background and your childhood first and figure out how you got to where you are today. So I would love to know who little Sneha was? Were you really influenced by art, supported?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my first encounter with art was actually, I used to love the texture of lipsticks. So my
Okay.
mom had lipsticks, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love, like when she was at work, I'd just go into her dresser and I'd take out the lipsticks and I'd put it against the bedroom mirror.
Oh my God.
And I just loved the way that felt. I didn't know I was making art, but like there was just something in that experience that I was just like, oh my God. Like,
how old were you? Like
I was
2 or
like probably like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like just like playing with it with my fingers, like enjoying the texture of it,
Yeah.
making a complete mess, but just really enjoying that experience. And I would say like that was probably my first introduction to art making in a way. Because then after that, my mom's just like, okay, we're gonna get you like kiddie oil sticks, and started playing with that. But then honestly, my parents were always really supportive. Like when I was 7, I kind of had like an oil painting instructor that kind of taught me how to get more into, like my dad and I would kind of on Sundays do oil painting classes together.
Oh my God, that's so nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did grow up in Mumbai, so there wasn't like an exposure to art history or like the global art market in that way.
Right.
We still didn't have like our national collections are very colonial. There was a lot of issues. Like to actually access art, it wasn't easy. So like when my dad would travel, he'd always come back with like these big Miro prints, like, you know, like posters of like, and I'd be so inspired because we didn't have artists like Miro, like, you know, around us. And to think that you can have art that's just random lines and so abstract, for me growing up was just like, made me feel like I could just create for the sake of creating without having a purpose behind it. Because I didn't even know what I was doing was art making at that point, right? Like, yeah, so I got introduced to art quite early on. I just loved the process of it.
So the courses that you did go to, you covered like, was it like foundational skills?
Yeah, so it was actually like I would say it goes back to the more Western way of learning, where essentially we're looking at one of these traditional oil painting textbooks, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Where you're copying a landscape done by a master and you're just trying to like emulate that with the strokes and try to get the same emotion out in your work.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of school that I kind of followed.
Yeah.
And I hated it.
Really?
I love the medium of oil painting, but I hated copying someone else.
Yeah, I had to do that at university too. Did you have to?
Luckily, no. What I loved about SAIC, and I love that institute to bits, is you don't have to declare a major. It follows an a la carte system. So no 2 students ever graduate with the same degree because there's like 100 classes.
Right.
Okay. And it's very conceptual as a school, which means that for one assignment, one artist can be like, my entire concept was that this is an artwork which could be nothing and have a really strong concept behind it. And another person could have worked tirelessly for 400 hours to put together this crazy, intricate piece of ceramic sculpture for the same assignment.
Right.
Right. So so much of this is up to you.
Yeah.
I feel like that is what true art is about. It's so much of it is conceptual, so much, especially when I'm talking about art in the 21st century, in the era that we live in, right? Where it's more about meaning, especially with AI now, where you have tools where you can really make at a different scale. And this, but in terms of production, there's nothing you can't create, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like conceptual art and having that kind of foundation at SAIC really helped me, because it helped me expand beyond what I had learned, you know, when I was kind of growing up, doing these oil painting classes, into like a whole other world of art where I realized like creativity has no bound, you know, and you can really exploit it. Like, you know, go to the wood cutting studio, build something there, you know, try your hand at something different. Yeah.
So are you a strong disbeliever in the traditional classical painting schools?
I'm not a disbeliever. When they existed in their time, they were innovative. A horse carriage today is completely irrelevant.
Right.
Right? Like, but when it was invented, it was transformative. In the same way, like when the first car, like Ford created, like Henry Ford kind of created like the car, like what he famously says, like if I told people what they wanted, they'd say faster horses, and he gave them the car, right?
Right.
In the same way, that's how I see art. Today, I feel like the traditional medium of painting is a bit irrelevant. If you think about what is art, right? In a world of AI, is art technique? It was technique, but I think art now has to have intentionality. It's the intent that's more important than the actual output.
Yeah. What if you wanted to say in your message, you did want to do something referential, right? You would need to have a foundational skill set. This is a very hot take right now, but yeah, like, do you not agree that like if that does hinder me, right? Like when I do want to paint something, I'm like, oh my God, I would love to paint like this beautiful landscape. And then I realize I have not practiced that in like 10 years. It's going to take me like a good 4 or 5 paintings to bring that skill back to be able to get that concept out of my head.
I would ask you, do you, Sravya, have to paint that? Or can it be painted as a landscape that you want it to look like by someone else, by the hand of another, or the hand of a machine?
Ooh, hot take. I guess it can. This is where, I guess opinions can differ. I guess I enjoy it. And I find that physical part is part of that expression, right? Like telling a story or...
Yeah. And I think it depends on the kind of artist as well. If you're an artist for whom creating, maybe like that kind of meditative practice is what your practice is about.
Yeah.
So then, of course, you need to know the skill set, because if that's the focus behind your work, super important. But however, if you're just going to do a series for which you need a skill, now do you need to go out and spend 10 years building that skill just so you can make a series? I think that's the beauty of living in our fast-paced world with the technology, with the humans that we have around us, that we can collaborate.
Right.
Like if you think about Jeff Koons, right? His studio.
Yeah.
Now, when he created like these old master works with like those, silver balls on them, right? Like those are all hand painted, but they weren't hand painted by him. He doesn't have that skill set.
Yeah.
But he was trying to make a concept and create like a body of work. Now that itself is problematic because obviously his entire commentary is about the commercialization of our world, right? And even that's kind of part of that language of that body of work.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like intentionality is so important.
Yeah.
Because maybe part of your practice is, taking that 10 years to create that skill set, and that becomes part of your entire body of work and actually fuse it with power. So yeah, I can't say I'm a disbeliever in maybe that line of like in any kind of painting. I just feel like it needs to be contextualized and made relevant for today. If you're an artist that just creates old master paintings because you like old master paintings, that's fine. But I would just say that like apart from aesthetics, you really need a stronger intentionality to connect back, right? Like why? Like you'll have a deeper reason. There's a reason why you're born in this century and you're creating these works, and that's your divine purpose. Because I really believe that like creativity comes from that space of consciousness. And if you are creating that work, ask deeper questions as to where is this coming from within me?
Yeah.
Why is it that I'm being drawn to create such works?
Yeah.
And what is the meaning I want this to have, right? In the present context.
The questions that you were asking me, do I really need to spend 10 years, etc.? It does bring up a good point about accessibility, right? If you have an idea, we now have the tools and skill set and less barriers to entry to be able to go express that, And it also brings up another great point that a lot of these big artists do have assistants and they commission, right? Like if you're a sculpture artist, you don't have to weld all of the pieces together yourself. You will work with a studio. You will work with even printmakers, right? And I think people sometimes forget that. And I'm sure the art world still values that, right? Like they're not going to cut you off because you didn't make your own sculpture.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Honestly, more and more we're seeing that happen, right? Where there would have been a point maybe where maybe you would have been cut off. But if you think about it, even in the olden days, or if you want to think about more traditionally, like the 13th century, like all of the big artists trained under senior artists in apprenticeships.
Yeah.
And they were creating works in the names of the main artist, right? Yeah. Like that's what you do. You'd be a studio apprentice, right? Yeah. And so I think maybe in like the post-war era, when we saw a draw towards individual, artists just kind of creating within the art school ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's when I think a shift happened towards like the individual, where it had to be an individual, because if you can't be an abstract expressionist painter painting somebody else's expression.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like
there's limits.
There's limits,
Yeah.
right? So I think maybe that's where that shift happened in terms of like us feeling like, oh, it has to be our own hand or the artist's hand. It needs to be like specifically that, like, you know, but even now when you look at the old masterworks, we do try to find out, is this really the artist, the senior artist's hand, or is it a studio apprentice who can help them paint? But yeah, the artist's hand, I think, has become less and less important now, where it has to be conceptually driven, especially when you look at contemporary art, like Felix Gonzalez Torres's beautiful sculptures of a candy, right? Mm-hmm. Now, does he have to be there putting the candy in a corner? You know, because each person, you know, for Felix Gonzalez Torres sculptures are essentially a concept where each person can go and kind of take a piece of candy and walk away with it and contribute, exactly. And kind of be part of that performance in a way, right? And that story. Now, the beauty of that is because anyone can really put the candy, you get a certificate, and the certificate is the artwork at the end of the day.
Got it.
And that's what you get, and you get the concept.
So you own the concept.
So you own the concept as buyer. But as the artist, it's the concept, it's the piece.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
it really pushes the boundaries of creativity, right?
It does.
And creative concepts.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, I'm bringing it back to you. So you trained as an artist, you did your BFA, and I know you yourself did poetry and painting. So why did you go into art history and curation side of things?
That's a great question. So yeah, for me, honestly, I never studied poetry. That's just something that came naturally to me, was my way of expression. And even beyond painting, when I was at SAIC, I was so exposed. For the first time, it felt like I was at Disneyland of art, you know?
Yeah.
Like I could take any course. So I tried my hand at printmaking. I tried my hand at sculpture, at ceramics with design objects, built a homeless shelter that was transportable across Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I just wanted to learn how to like use my hands and my skills in like different ways and learn creation, right? So I really explored as much as I could. Now, I've always loved English and history. And I never ever knew about a subject like art history. Mm-hmm. Kind of growing up in India, it isn't something like you're taught, right? Like we read materials when we were making in school, but we never were introduced to that concept. So when I went SAIC and I went for my first Art History 101 class, I was blown away. Like, I loved writing about art. Like, it felt like I was merging these two separate identities that were within me into one, like the artist identity and this lover of history and academic identity into one.
Can you explain what art history is for someone who might not know?
Yeah, for sure. So art history is really, you know, where we tell the story of art, where in our Art History 101 class, you're really looking at objects right from the beginning of time, which is if you look at Western art history, it would be the Venus of Willendorf.
Okay.
She's like this beautiful little plump statue of a woman.
I remember.
Yeah. And you kind of look at it, it's a bit problematic because it's a bit Western focused. So you kind of look at it across the period of Western history into the present time. And that's kind of like the Art History 101 class, where you're looking at these different objects, really studying the meaning behind them, the context in which they were made, but then also creating your own viewpoint about them. So that's why I love about art history, because it gives you like this moment, a snapshot of time to realize how has context changed over a period of time as well, right? Like how do you bring something into how do you bring an art object from the past into today and still make it relevant?
Right.
And that's what a lot of museum curators try to do. If you think about their work with the wall labels, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make these objects from the past relevant to you today so that you can kind of get a bit of a snapshot and a bit of the history, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really a way of telling a story about an object.
There's one part where you study the history of it. There's the other part where you get to react to it. I struggled with that part because I thought I'm at university. There has to be a right or wrong in what I write. How do I get graded on this? You know, all of that stuff. But then the bigger realization was, wait, what about all the art that I saw back in Hong Kong and back in India. Where was the colonization in this timeline? You know what I mean? I was reading these papers on the world fairs that used to happen, and they were like talking about art from the Orient. And I'm like, okay, but can we go deeper into that? It just gets, skimmed over. And that's, by the time I ended my degree is when I was like, wait, I'm missing all of this information and nobody in the room seems to care either. So I don't know if you went through something similar.
I did. And, in my third year, actually, this happened to me. I study a bit about the world's fairs in my program as well. And I'll end up focusing on that in my master's, actually. But what happened was in my third year of college, I decided to study abroad in Italy. In Florence, I was studying art restoration and conservation. But when I was there, everyone kept asking me about Indian art history, because
Wow.
Italians are so proud of their culture. They want to learn about other people's cultures, and they'd keep asking me. And I was so embarrassed because I felt like, I didn't know enough. I never studied enough about the cultural art history of India. I knew about the political history but I never actually, knew that much about art that came post-independence and art that was there pre-independence and the different, because every country has such a rich tapestry, right? Because there's always art being created across a period of time.
Yeah.
And you just need art historians to come there and then, use pedagogy to really connect the dots, right?
Yeah.
In a way. And it made me feel like, I really need to learn a bit about this. This is slightly embarrassing. So after I came back from Italy to Chicago to continue my degree, I started taking and kind of just focusing more on classes that were about Asian art history.
So those were there.
That's
amazing.
So I did have that option. It was just meant you can't start that right at the beginning of your program.
Right.
Because they want to give you a foundation, and that foundation is largely Western. Then in the third year, you can start taking random courses that you love across the art history department. And I started taking a lot more about Indian art history, Asian art now, just really figuring out, okay, what is the story that's here?
So after you did your master's in art history, how did you, I guess, start your career and get to where you are today?
So I actually started my career when I was in art school.
Okay.
So I, in my second year, got an internship working for an art advisor. So I sneakily managed to get an internship. I just literally sent across my resume, and because being a South Asian student, I had a packed resume because we do so many internships when we're in school as well.
Yeah.
That they were quite impressed, and they were like, you know what? Okay, let's give this a shot.
What kinds of things were on your resume before that point?
Yeah, so it actually, I really wanted to do a lot of volunteering work. So I used to volunteer at a school near my high school, which was kind of part of our program. And we'd kind of go and teach English, and we'd teach art within these schools as an after curricular activity for the students. And then I also kind of worked in Dharavi, which was, the slum area in Bombay. And there I kind of was working with this thing. It's called the Dharavi Art Room.
Okay.
Where essentially it was a safe space for kids to come and kind of just express themselves.
Wow.
Within that context, whether, if there's any domestic violence happening at home, they just need a safe space. They just wanted to come somewhere to talk to someone, just experience art and photography and just pick up a skill. It was just a safe space for them.
Yeah.
And kind of, so I used to do a lot of volunteering work there as well. So, we also had I used to sell mugs at different events because I was trying to raise money for a charity that my fundraising, exactly. Where essentially the idea was for every mug you buy, you can have sponsor 5 days for child's education.
Okay.
And I was always trying to put my foot in the door in different experiences just to kind of see how can I contribute.
Right.
How can I be of service? How can I take whatever skill set I have and put it to use and maybe create a bit of joy through art, right?
Yeah.
If I can have a career that allows me to connect those skill sets and those dots, that would be amazing. From going to art fairs, understanding what art is available, kind of talking, I've always had an intuitive knack to really be able to study human psychology, but also like just body language and understand like, okay, what would you like? What would you not like? Being a bit of an empath, I've always been like very sensitive to other people, auras around me. And that is what an art advisor really does. So for those of you who don't know what an art advisor is, right? An art advisor is really someone that helps you find the right artwork for a space. Very much not like most art advisors are very knowledgeable in an area of art history. They're very knowledgeable about the art market, curation, and the many different aspects that come with managing an art collection as well. And how can we build a collection that really tells that story? Because unlike any other object, even furniture you might change out when you do the next interior design of your house, but the art stays. It's something that you keep for life, right? Yeah. Especially if you love it. To find that right piece, you really need to tap into understanding what is the story, what is the cause or narrative that these people really want to push forward.
Yeah.
So like I've worked with clients, right, that have a South African background, and they really wanted to build a collection that spoke to that narrative, but here in Richmond at their home.
Right.
And they really care about championing women entrepreneurs. And they wanted that narrative to be woven into the art collection as well. So we worked a lot with female artists that were talking about the entrepreneurial journey. They were experimenting with different materials. And that was really exciting. And looking at such a diverse range of art at all given moments of time, I was never bored.
That's the big thing, right? If you're constantly excited by that role, it's for you.
Yeah, because like every client would come with a different set of challenges, a different narrative that I would then need to like fulfill. And it was such an exciting brief to kind of work with and get involved with. And I just realized like I really enjoy this, like every aspect of that persona. So it wasn't just the idea of it. It was like being in there with my hands. I was also interning at the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a museum, working with the European Decorative Arts Department with the two curators on a blockbuster exhibition that was going to open the year I graduated. So it was over 3 years that I worked on it.
Wow.
Called It was called Ireland Art on a World Stage.
Okay.
And it was really looking at Ireland between the periods of 1600s and 1800 and looking at European decorative arts through that period. Now, I had no interest in European decorative arts, but what I loved was exhibition design and kind of getting my hands deep in understanding how loan agreements work, understanding how the entire process, how does one even put together a blockbuster, $1 million exhibition.
Who funds these?
So it's a mixture of funding.
Okay.
So a lot of times like museums will have planned funding, but a lot of times it will be funding that comes from corporates, from families, from donors that they kind of get the money from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if, for example, this one, right, about Ireland, who would be, you don't have to give me specifics, but just for somebody to understand how like the finance side of this works, I would assume, this is my assumption, I guess embassies, governments, tourism boards would want to put this narrative out there to educate people. Is that right? Who else would want to?
Yeah, and then you'd also have collectors who have such objects in their collections that want the story to be told because, museum shows both add value on an educational front, but they also add value on the monetary front. You're putting so many eyeballs on it. And with that, you're also kind of increasing the demand for the object in a way, right?
Got it.
Because in someone's mind, it now becomes like an object that is to be coveted. It's that you want to spend time with. So from that perspective, collectors also have something to gain. So you'll often have collectors who also kind of help fund some of these exhibitions if some of their pieces have been chosen by the curators to be put in these exhibitions. Yeah.
Right. That connects the dots because there's a side of you build your own collection for investment purposes, let's say, or joy. Both. And then, I always had the notion it just sits there and one day you hope that it goes up in value and you can sell it. But there is very much this other part where you can get in touch with curators and let them know about your collection and get it out there so that it does actually build value. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of it because you don't want a collection to be stagnant, especially if you have an institutional collection. So a lot of private institutions, like when I say private, I mean like when you have financial institutions that have collections, they will loan as well because the idea is how can you share it with large audiences? Yeah.
Do you feel sometimes like it is quite elitist? Even the things that we're talking about, right? Having a private collection, it takes money. It takes a lot of money to have that.
This is something that I'm trying to fight with. Is it depends on the kind of collection you're trying to build. Okay? Building an art collection doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. If you start buying art from art schools, if you start buying art from artists who are just starting off, if you start really patroning them, if you really try to support an artist, you can add value in many different ways and start building an art collection. If you want to build an institutional collection where you're starting at a certain price point, obviously, like, it is an elitist world, because to have that much disposable income that you can then spend to buy art, you have to be only at a certain level.
Yeah.
At the same time, yes, the art world is very elitist, because when you're playing in that, because there's different markets in the art world, right?
Yeah.
If you're buying art just to purely enjoy yourself and you want to hang out with artists, then you can literally start with even 300 quid. Go on our website. Our price point starts at like, I think £200 for one of the artworks that we have on there. And that's from like really supporting incredibly talented art school students once they've graduated, to kind of push their careers, right? And that's like the I would say the starting point. Okay. After that, you have the artists that are represented by the grassroots galleries, right? And those price points you look at would be like £2,000 to like maybe £6,000, and the higher end would be maybe something larger, will be like £10,000. Okay, after that you will have like your more mid galleries where maybe like their price points will start at about £20,000 onwards. And then you have your blue chip galleries where you're looking at least like about £100,000 to even like start buying something significant from them. They'll also have stuff in the £10,000 range, but then they'll usually be the editions or really small works. Yeah, exactly. So like those are the different tiers when you think about like in the art world. So obviously accessibility is a huge point and part of it, right? But then at the same time, an artist needs to be able to grow in their careers as well, because you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
The artist that starts at the bottom also needs to be able to, through their career, make it to the top. Otherwise, when are they actually going to earn enough money?
Yeah.
Right? So I would argue that it is an elitist art world in that accessibility is a huge issue, but at the same time, there needs to be a model that allows artists to grow within that space as well.
Right.
The art world can be elitist in many different ways, because if you're actually looking at art on the investment level, which is the highest level, sometimes even if you have the money and want the artwork, you won't be able to get it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know the right people, or because, you haven't started building the right kind of collection. So you'll hear a lot of stories about art collectors and that, were promised a piece but never got it because an institution wanted it instead, and it went to the institution instead. And it does get more and more elitist as you head up the threshold.
Yeah. And what about for someone wanting to work in the art world, right? That has been my fear with going the other way. My parents wanted me to go more of the curator route, the Sotheby's route, but I always found it quite intimidating in the sense like very Devil Wears Prada, and quite predominantly white spaces. I think that now recently in the new like 5 years at Frieze Art Basel, I see diversity. And maybe that's also because I'm in the West, but like in Hong Kong, like you will not see brown people and black people in these spaces. I think it is changing, right? Like what would you say for a person starting out? It is quite scary.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I remember when I was trying to get a job in a gallery when I graduated from SAC, I was not a tall white girl, like ex-model body, not at all. There was a stereotype, especially for the blue chip art galleries, for the type of way you'd have to look and dress in order to work even in the gallery sector. Now, I think that's one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is the salaries in the art world have been ridiculously low for far too long. And that's a huge problem. And the thing is, it's because some of the galleries struggle so much that they genuinely can't pay higher salaries, especially on the lower end of the market. It's a weird ecosystem where we still, I think, are struggling, despite it being such an old industry, to find revenue models that really work. And what I love about it is you can inject so much creativity into this. Like with Curaty, we started with art leasing. That's how we started the company, right?
Right.
And the idea was, how can we give artists a salary? The thought was that, wait, if we lease artworks by artists, so they're not paying for storage space to keep their works, and instead they're going to corporate offices where they can inspire.
That's genius.
It's a win for the artist because they're not paying for storage, but then they're also getting a salary because, like, if they're renting at least like 10 artworks together, that's a decent amount that could actually pay for the studio space. And that was the intention with which we started that model. And I think that's the thing. There's so much scope for innovation within this space. So it is elitist in a way because, like, barrier to entry is high.
Yeah.
Because you have to have an art degree, which also is expensive, without the guarantee of a payout like you do with other degrees. Because the funny thing is, what I find really interesting about our education system is that no matter what degree you get, they're often priced the same. Apart from an MBA, like we're looking at like a normal bachelor's degree, that literally like your math degree does not cost more than your art degree does, and that does not correlate to like the jobs you get after.
Yeah. And that's a huge argument in the Indian communities, right? Like a lot of people are like, well, why wouldn't I get an engineering one? Because my base salary will be much higher.
The problem is self-actualization is not the goal. Earning higher is the goal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you think of the purpose of life, which is actually self-actualization, because money is an energy, entire education system is so kind of messed in a way because it does not allow for that to be the goal. That's what I loved about going to art school, because I was like, when I was there, I was like, this should be the next MBA, because like it's all about figuring out who you are, expressing your truest self, finding your own unique voice and path.
Yeah.
Right. And that is really the part to self-actualization, is finding that voice. So you can then figure out, okay, now that I found this voice that I have within me, how can I be my authentic self in this world?
Yeah.
And then earn money doing so. Because that's what entrepreneurship is, right? That's where creativity kicks in and allows you to kind of carve your path. The problem is that if you start going from the scarcity mindset and the safety mindset, which is what you're talking about, like the Indian thought process, right? That used to be like the stereotypical one, where you're like, let's go the engineering route because it's safe. You're coming from a place of fear.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is valid, right? Like I do get like younger people coming to me and asking, should I go down in the fine art route and get that degree? Or even people who want to quit their jobs and go full time, be an illustrator or be an artist. And I myself had to save up. I had to really think about, how am I going to do this? Build up my network before I quit my job. And I'm very lucky that I don't have to pay my parents' bills, right? And as long as I can cover myself and I don't increase my own burdens, I'm going to do okay. But it was very much, I'm aware of the financial realities, right? And for someone who has to maybe fund their entire family, I would say there are different ways to do it, right? You don't have to bet all of it on becoming a famous painter, because it's not going to work that way. But there are other jobs that have salaries in the art world that you can do.
And also, if let's say you are someone that needs to pay your parents' bills, right? And you always wanted to be an artist or a creative person, you can take that energy and put it anywhere. The thing is, a lot of times what we do is we suppress our creativity. We suppress our inner artist and we just say, hey, I can't take this into any role. But the truth is, there's two types of problems. There's the gravity problems, which are ones that you can't change. And then there's the more temporary problems, which are ones that are problems that you see, but they're actually changeable. It's about perspective shift, right? A gravity problem is the fact that, artists do have to struggle before they can earn a sustainable living. And it is it's even entrepreneurs, right? Like, it's a similar risk and story and reward. And if you're someone that, let's say, cannot afford to take that risk right now because of the way the world is structured and the world that we live in, then doesn't mean you have to like deny your creativity. It doesn't have to be an either or story.
Yeah.
You can still get a job as a product manager. You can get a job as an engineer. You can get a job in any other industry. But you take your creativity and you express it in a different way through that outlet.
Yeah.
What I always believed, and I still believe, is that if we had more artists working in, as like basically trained artists working within businesses, we'd operate with so much more empathy, with so much more creativity, because it's that energy. It's bringing the creative energy with you that inspires and uplifts and energizes. When you're around creative people, honestly speaking, like, you feel empowered. It's a shift. It's literally just an energetic shift. When you operate from that space, you cannot be bored at your job because you'll find a creative way to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Even if you have to do data entry all day, if you bring creative energy into your job, into that role, you'll find another way. Maybe you'll start playing a podcast. Maybe you'll multitask. You'll create a system that can do the data entry for you, but you'll bring that creative energy with you. Even for me, after I went to art school, I, honestly speaking, fell in love with art history, but I have to be really vulnerable and open here. Like, I think I denied myself of my artistic skill because I was surrounded by so much talent all around me that the empath in me was just like, I want to help all of these people, show their art. And I started denying my own creative expression because I felt that maybe it wasn't good enough. It's only in the last year and very recently that I've started getting back, I've been painting on and off, but like really making it part of my daily practice to paint again, to write again, to express my poetry again. And I've been going for more open mic nights and allowing myself now to get back in that zone while I have a full-time job, which is running my company and dabbling other things. It doesn't have to be everything, but the point is, like, to live a more self-actualized presence,
right,
you have to allow yourself to own that creativity as part of your journey.
Yeah.
So you can be someone that works at Amazon, but then also have an identity as an artist after hours.
100%. Yeah.
Right?
I think that's great inspiration and great guidance for someone listening, because there are so many different ways to be an artist. I was going to ask you, my next question was, where are you headed in the next 5 years, I guess? Where do you want to be?
I want to be a multi-hyphenate. For me, what I'm starting to realize is that I was clinging so hard to this company that I was trying to build over the last 5 years that I made it my identity. Like Curaty, I felt like Curaty had to be everything I am. And now I'm like, you know what? Actually, no, I am so much more than that. I am an artist. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
I love speaking, and if I can, inspiring other people to get more creative. But yeah, so I think in the next 5 years, honestly, I'm trying to build a life that I love to live, and also one where I can inspire other people from and really like be the highest creative expression of myself.
I love that, because having that mindset and that openness to different skills, I truly believe increases your capacity, because sometimes when you are like founders, your company can just be more than what you can handle. And when you have this mindset, you realize you can do so much. Because I get it a lot. People are like, hey, wait, you have your studio, you have your podcast, you're painting. Like, how do you do it all? But it is very much like, I'm just trying to be happy and like do what I love. And it really expands what I can do and what I can handle. And we've had conversations about this before.
Yeah. And I think that's, someone I was talking to earlier kind of said this to me, and it really resonated, which was, there's like a billion ways to build a company. You can do it Sarah Blakely's way, of building Spanx over 30 years. You can do it the way Elon Musk tries to build companies in 3 to 4 years and make them super crazy. And one is masculine energy.
I was just going to ask you.
And one is feminine energy.
Yeah.
Right? I think that earlier I was trying to build a company from a place of masculine energy, which is 100%. Chasing.
Yeah.
You're constantly chasing goals. All that is built very much from a masculine energy, where in 6 months you burn yourself out.
Totally.
You really try to build something at scale. And the idea is you fail fast, but that also does not mean you die fast. Like, you need to build something.
But that's what like society told me, right? I was like, oh yeah, I'm an accelerator. I've made it. Like, I'm going to scale so fast. But you realize like, this is the masculine energy. And like you were saying before, like our body takes 9 months, right? To build a baby. That is the feminine energy, to take your time. There's time and place.
Exactly. And you have to do it with peace. And the feminine energy is the energy that attracts. The masculine energy is one of chasing. Okay. So if you have to build from a place of feminine energy, that I don't mean just like sit and just wait for something to come to you. You're still building, but you're building without an outcome-driven mindset, where you're kind of nurturing your garden. You're doing the things that bring you joy, with meaning and purpose, and you're building a company with the intention that like the work itself, the process itself is joyful enough.
Yeah.
And that will bring in the clients. That will bring in, like, like think about it this way, like when you're creating content, right? Like you're putting content out there, you're doing it from a sense of creativity and very much a feminine place of existence. You're really expressing yourself, right? And someone will see that content and then contact you from it. That's a way of building from feminine energy. Masculine energy is like cold calling, where you like create a massive list and you're just like constantly chasing people. You can constantly like kind of building from that space. They both work, right? But it depends on who you are and what your long-term goals is and short-term goals are. If you want to kind of build, scale, and sell a company in 3 years, you're building from masculine energy. If you're looking to build a life around this, like this is your life, like you're building an identity, like an artist's career is very much one from a feminine place where you're like nurturing yourself. You realize that, hey, I have a whole lifetime ahead of me. I can't burn out by the time I'm like 30.
Yeah.
Like I need to, because a lot of us push, like I think 30 is that mark, right? Where you feel like everything's going to change. You have to achieve everything or life's over. And then you push so hard against that you often like burn out at 30. For me, I fell into that trap of building from masculine energy. And I think now I'm kind of relearning how to build from a place of creativity, a place of love, and a more nurturing energy. I think that's the exciting bit, is building a life that you truly love, that attracts the people towards it just because it's that inspired, because it comes from a place of fulfillment and fullness and wholeness.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where you go. Before we wrap up, I want to do a rapid fire round of like fun things.
Let's do it.
A lighthearted note to end. So these are like quick, okay? Whatever comes to mind. If you could curate an exhibition anywhere in the world, which city or venue would you choose?
Japan.
Oh, fun. If you could magically acquire one new creative skill overnight, what would it be?
It would be the skill to be able to just tell stories. Like just be a storyteller.
I like that. I think you are one.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe my wish is coming true.
Yeah. If every piece in your show had to be one color, which would you choose and why?
Yellow. Because honestly, the right shade of yellow can just make you so happy and change everything.
It's color psychology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we need a part 2 of this conversation because there are so many things that I want to dive into and I think people can really benefit. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, we should definitely do it again.
I'd love to. You let me know when.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Be sure to follow Sneha on Instagram at snehashah.art and visit curaty.co to explore more of her work. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who would appreciate it. Stay connected for updates on new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and creative industry insights by following us on social media or joining our newsletter at desianddesign.com. That's all for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.